Hello, and welcome to the Washington Courts Report podcast, the official podcast of the Administrative Office of the Courts. I'm your host, Patric Haerle, and today our topic is court security, and we're going to cover the type of security incidents courts and judges are facing across our state, what trends we're seeing in security incidents and threats against judges and court staff, what courts can do to improve security, and what to do if a court or judge receives a threat. To cover this topic, I'm pleased to be joined by Kyle Landry, a court security consultant for the AOC, and the one-man team in charge of AOC's Office of Courthouse Security. Kyle, thanks for coming on the show and covering this important topic with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me on, Patrick.
Yeah, of course. And just diving right in here, could you tell us a little bit about the Office of Courthouse Security and what services it offers to courts and judges for those who might not know?
Absolutely. So this is a new office that was established in 2023, I believe. It did not exist previously. And so we were able to secure funding for this position to help build out these services for the courts, which is long overdue, we'll say. So I worked for the courts since 2021, I want to say, in a similar capacity as a court security coordinator, coordinating grants. And then this position was created and was able to transition into that with a lot of the pre-existing relationships that I built as a result of that. So Chris Stanley and Don Marie were both very gracious, primarily in giving me a ton of leeway to say, hey, figure out what's best and build out the program. And so with that being said, it's been extremely challenging as well as fun to really figure out what it is that courts need, where our biggest gaps are, as well as figuring out ways that we can better build that out. And unfortunately, there is more work than one person is able to do, but doing my best to try to meet that. Hopefully we're able to grow a little bit in the future. So with that being said, the actual duties of my office is really anything related to security at a base level. As far as the security consulting goes, really advising courts on best practices, advising on security upgrades that they can make to their buildings or policies, providing security assessments to courts, that's on-site security assessments, as well as if we're able to ascertain anything remotely to help. Sometimes we get requests from, most recently it was courthouse facilitators about options that they can purchase to better secure their doors during lockdown events and stuff like that. So really for them, I don't really need to go into your office in order to see that. If you want to send me photos, I can come up with a pretty decent plan for you. So those are sort of foundational level services that we offer to courts on request, really. Additionally, doing court security committee sit-ins, either for courts that have pre-established court security committees. I don't want to call it an audit because that kind of implies sort of a pass-fail. There's really none of that. Yeah. It is really more of a just seeing what works, what doesn't work, as well as, that's very helpful in seeing what courts are doing that's really well, that's innovative, that works well, that's innovative, as well as moving towards, hey, how do we move that into other courts to better help them, especially for court security committees. They don't cost anything except people's time, which is very valuable. But again, especially when we talk about budget cuts, anything that we can do that doesn't cost any additional funding is key. Additionally to that, we manage the security grants for AOC. Typically, we have about one a year. Right now we have about 500,000 that we are able to allocate to courts. Past years is about 1 million. We hope going forward that we're able to continue this. I know for 2027 we are slated for another 500K to distribute to courts. But as we all know, the current state of funding is in flux. So we're going to roll with the punches there, but I know that courts have been very successful in implementing a lot of longstanding and much needed improvements for their courthouses. Also provide advisory services to judges on threats. So if they receive a threat, hey, they're welcome to reach out to me, either directly through email or phone or through our threat reporting form. And so I'll get an alert if the threat report is submitted and reach out to that judge directly or whoever submitted it, just to touch base about some of the details, see where it is that we need to go from there. A lot of times as part of that, if a judge is threatened or court staff, I'll also take a look and see what sort of information is available online, as well as a little bit of a small dive into the individual to see some of the major risk factors that we might see, such as do they have a court case that's coming up or something like that might act as a triggering event for the future that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, covering a wide range of security topics there. I think it's really important. Really glad that the new office is there to help with that, and that I've spoken to you in the past. You're passionate about it. You're experienced. It's great to hear. And one thing we want to make sure to include is we can include contact information and a link to the incident reporting system, just so any courts or judges who might not be aware of it. And we can include some contact information for you in the descriptions of the show. So one thing I know is the last time we chatted, there was a rise in court security incidents and threats. Could you tell us a little bit about the trends we've been seeing in the past year or two and what form some of these incidents are taking?
Yeah, so we do a annual analysis of where we're at with threats and sort of compare them to past years. And this kind of changes or helps us develop an idea of what shifts we're seeing. And so in 2024, we had 160 incidents that were submitted to our system. So far in 2025, and I pulled this last night, we're at 144. So we're about 16 away from our max of 2024. So I think we are going to, unfortunately, plow through our ceiling for 2024, which means that threats will again increase. Perhaps more concerning than that is the fact that when we look at our incidents, what we define as critical incidents, which are incidents where staff, judges and staff, or the public are actually in danger of being injured, those trend up every single year. So regardless of, or I should say, the rates of those trend up every single year. And so regardless of whether we have a dip in the number of incidents or we have an increase in the number of incidents, the rate and frequency of our critical incidents continue to climb every single year. So I'll be curious to see where we land in 2025. We haven't done that deep dive into that yet. However, I'd be surprised if we reverse that trend at this point. I will present a little bit of a caveat with that information. We have implemented a new category that courts can report, and that is preventative measures. And that is really designed for when judges or staff feel uncomfortable, somebody is acting in a way that makes them fear for their safety. A lot of times they're calling for court security officers, and court security officers arrive on scene or law enforcement, and they intervene either through de-escalation skills or just their presence. And what we've seen is that courts are able to make those calls, get those people in place, and as a result, we're seeing positive effects for courts. People are being de-escalated as a result of those interventions. And that was something that we really wanted to capture, especially as we really harp on the fact that security personnel are really important. We can give all the metal detectors in the world to all the courts, but if we don't have people to run them and respond to the emergencies, it's kind of a moot point. There's very interesting data in regards to some of the other aspects of it. Bomb threats is one of those things where during COVID, they almost dropped down to almost nothing. 2020 through, I want to say 2022, we were in like one or two a year, which is a massive decrease compared to past years. We saw an increase in that with entering into an election year, I would say, because of the proximity of our courts to election centers, ballot collection points, and election processing. In a lot of counties, they might share the same building, or they might have those collection boxes on site. And we did see some events throughout the state targeting those collection points, and that does affect the courts. We did see recently, actually just 2 months ago, there was an individual who appeared to be planning a attack on a courthouse using explosive devices. It's on the Department of Justice's website. He was arrested on that, and he's being charged in the state as well. Just because there was an existing grievance, he was able to secure the materials for that despite being a convicted felon, and again, appeared to be targeting the individuals who he felt like they were responsible for his conviction, which he believed to be wrongful. So in the past, I would say that we've seen a lot of bomb threats that were meant to be disruptive, very similar to schools. People don't want to do something at school that day. They call it a bomb threat. with their underdeveloped brains and disrupt the activities. People want the same thing for court. I don't really want to go to court. I want to disrupt court, and so I'm going to call in this bomb threat or whatever it is. That's most of what we see. It's pretty rare for us to see actual events that are carried out, but this appears to be one of those times where it seems like a crisis was averted.
Absolutely. That's so important that they were able to catch that in time. And we will have a link to that DOJ page on the podcast description for anyone who wants to read more about that. And, there's some good news with the de-escalation there that you mentioned, but there was also a lot of worrying news with, the growing rate of, critical threats. So obviously one thing they can do is reach out to you, but what can courts do to improve security for their judges and court staff? What are some steps that they should be taking if they're concerned?
Yeah, I would say that the number one thing that courts can do is establish their court security committee. It's baseline foundational on General Rule 36. It's also the first step for NCSC's best practices for courts, for courthouse security. It's key to have that means for sharing information between stakeholders who share either the building or just in the work that courts do, as well as expanding the net. We see some court security committees that consist of a very small group, maybe just judges or something like that. It's great that they have something in place. An expanded court security committee is even better, just because you're able to capture folks from the mental health side of the spectrum, other government agencies that might be in that same building who are seeing concerning aspects, law enforcement, whatever it is. And I've sat in on some court security committees where there's a very active sharing of information, nothing that crosses over into, concerning levels of sharing information, but just heads up, hey, this person who's caused problems for us in the past is back in town. They appear to be causing problems at other government agencies. Don't be surprised if they start showing up at ours as well. So that would be the number one thing that I would suggest to courts, especially because it's free. Related to that is encouraging staff to report concerns. I think that one of the things that we learn as we talk to courts is there's a court culture sometimes that can stifle reporting. And some of that comes from a normalcy bias, we'll say, of nothing's ever happened here. Why would you think that something's going to happen now? And that's, I would say, a dangerous level of thinking. Again, if we're seeing concerning behaviors, whether that's somebody taking photos of staff vehicles or somebody lurking around at odd hours or hanging around the staff entrance or exit and seeing when people come out. Those are all things that are worthy of being reported, just because they're warning signs that could signal imminence of a pre-attack indicator, I'll say. Last thing I would say is applying for security grants to address gaps. This is really where security committees come into play, because you have so many people there, especially if you're able to engage your facilities folks who are very knowledgeable about the building and its shortcomings and, which locks expand in the summer and suddenly don't lock, things that most of us don't think about. If you're able to get all those folks in the same room to identify some of the glaring needs, then you're in a really good place when grants pop up. We know that the application period for grants can be really short, whether that comes from us at AOC or federal agencies, federal grants. The application process can be really overwhelming, and it can be really short. And being already set up to identify with those things identified can be make or break it for courts, we'll say, as far as securing their funding.
Absolutely. And, we know who they can contact if they want to establish that court security committee or, put some steps in place. So if there's any courts or judges out there listening who don't have one in place yet, absolutely, Kyle Landry is your guy. So now moving on to what should a court or judge do if they do have a security incident or they do receive a threat? What are some of the clear-cut first steps they should take if this arises, unfortunately?
Yeah. So in regards to security incidents, it really depends on how you determine whether the severity of that incident, I'll say. If somebody's being disruptive, obviously handle it there on the front end and then report it back. I'll say, as a general guideline, as important of a role as AOC and my office provides, really it should go to local law enforcement, local security first. Again, I'm not able to get out to Okanagan in time to solve your issue. Your folks that are there are able to. And so we start with law enforcement and protecting your court staff. So disseminating any relevant information that is important for keeping staff safe to them, whether that's, immediate, hey, stay in your offices, or hey, this is what we're seeing, maybe be aware of it when you're walking out to your car. That sort of thing is really important, as well as getting local law enforcement involved, just so that, again, we are getting people on the ground there in a timely manner. Lastly, and I say lastly, even though this should really be within a couple of hours, reporting that to AOC is really important. I think that what we see with some incidents that are reported is there actually can be very concerning factors there when we look at it a little bit deeper. Things that look like somebody might be planning to attack a judge or something like that, or staff, stalking behavior and anything like that. And sometimes you just need a third party to take a look at that. And that's really where those alerts that come to AOC, very limited staff, just myself and my superior, really get an alert about it so that we can take a look and say, oh, that's this is a little bit more serious than what we might be looking at. Let's touch base with them, just make sure that they have the information and resources to make educated decisions themselves. Besides that, I would just say on the threat side of things, reaching out, one, reporting it. Second, reaching out. Again, like I said, we do dive into judges and court staff's information online, just see what your exposure is. If there's anything that can be done to help reduce some of that, because what we see with our incidents in the past couple of years is certainly that folks are researching our staff and judges online. So we see, I would say, a lot less in-person stalking and a lot more someone calling on personal cell phones or emails or those other means where it shows us that they're looking for you online. And if your information is online, they may have it. And so really, I think that what we would say is if you start to get those threats or concerning incidents, is reach out, one, but two, take a look at your own online exposure and take steps to address that.
Absolutely, some clear cut steps courts and judges can take to improve their security and answer these threats and instances as they arise. And big one of those is take advantage of the AOC incident reporting system and work with your local law enforcement. All right, well, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us on the show today and helping us cover this important topic, helping judges and courts stay safe. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Patrick.